was trying to say, markets are they're forecasting vehicles, and nobody knows the future, so markets have to constantly try to assess what the future holds, and they don't know. But you know, the argument that stocks have bounced, and I agree, too far, too fast. But what they've done, to some extent, is they had to price in the possibility of Armageddon, and when Armageddon suddenly looked like it wasn't going to happen, they could take that risk out of the market. And now they may be somewhat over-exuberant about how fast the economy is going to recover. But, you know, inevitably there's a direct relationship between stocks and the economy. It's just stocks are trying to forecast the economy and can get it wrong several times before they finally get it right. And that is the challenge for investors is, you know, are they telling you the right forecast now? And
Yes, sir.
The markets are supposed to forecast, that's what we all hope, and yet there's increasing evidence and increasing number of analyses that argue that efficient markets are more the exception than the rule. Soros talks about it, and many others do, and that the assumption that markets can do no wrong, that they forecast well, seems to be shot. That markets are as human as the human beings that make up markets. Do you think that markets are infallible?
Oh, certainly not. I mean, they forecast, but I mean they get it wrong a lot. But over time, they can predict that times are going to improve, but that doesn't mean that their forecast will be the same tomorrow as it is today.
But would you say that the record of market forecasts in the last 15 years has been accurate or
well, it was accurate for stocks to fall precipitously. First this crisis started in August of 2007, and the market was accurate in forecasting that. They didn't forecast that it was going to be that things were going to deteriorate as much as they did, but there were the thing is, as Mr. Soros will say and others will say, is events cause other events, and events happen, and then policy changes in response to the events, and the market doesn't know necessarily how policy will change. And it is they're not infallible. They're not even, maybe they're the best we can do in terms of predicting the future, but they're not infallible. But I think the market is trying to forecast that things will get better, but the market is just all of us, and they're trying to assess exactly how much. But I think what the markets have done is partly priced out what they saw as a reasonable risk of the financial sector melting down. And having priced that out, they now have to now you have to look at them and say, well, what does the outlook look like? And I think, my view is the outlook isn't so great, and so the markets have maybe properly taken out the really downside, but now what do we get excited about? And
I think one thing we have to watch very closely is your second quarter results that are coming through. The banks will be reporting, the Canadian banks will be reporting next week, and it's going to be 2.5 months before we get the feel as to what's going to happen. Yeah. So this is why this bumpy road is going to take place. The sell in May and go away. I just don't think it's going to happen again because there's so much money around that have missed this market. The retailers have been out of it. You've had the hedge funds that were short. They suddenly had to cover, and then they went long again. And you also had a lot of the funds that may have not done, that probably didn't do very well. They said, by God, we better get with it, or we're going to lose, the managers are going to lose some of these funds. So you had all that building up in the marketplace. One other thing before I promised Tony.